All right, here we go. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello. I can hear you.
Okay,
Hi,
great.
Steph.
All right, so we have an audience. So let's start 1 minute early. What do you know? We're ready. We're getting better at this.
I know, and I already switched over my hotspot, so ready to go without me, falling off within the first minute or so.
All right, let's go. Cool.
Okay. So, welcome all those who are watching us. As you guys know, this is the bi-weekly, oh my gosh, I can't do this. The bi-weekly that Gustavo and I do through Instagram. And so the purpose of this is just to talk about some hot topics in real estate to get a very local opinion and view on things, to educate people. There's a lot that is going on in the market right now. So Gus and I, we like to come on live and just kind of clear up some of the lies, misconceptions, that kind of stuff from a hyper local point of view. So I'm Jen Strelka. I'm a real estate agent with the Highmark team out of North Shore, Milwaukee. And then we have Gustavo, who's with Crim City Mortgage.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me again, Jen. Another week here. So what's the topic for today? What's the big one?
So the big topic for today is we are going to discuss the home buying process. Believe it or not, this is, we've been doing these for the past few months now, and we haven't discussed the home buying process. So we do know that it takes a while for someone to decide, hey, I want to buy a house. Once you make that decision, then it's like, okay, now what? What do I do? What are the next steps? So Gus and I are here to kind of go over some of the next steps from a high level perspective.
And so I'm gonna put you on the spot. What made you like? Because yeah, to us it's second nature, right? But
Mhm.
where did this come from? Where did the light bulb hit? Is it was it the start of the spring market that people are looking out, or what kind of spurred this? Because I agree, this is a topic that I think can hit anybody, not just a first time home buyer, but honestly, even somebody who's purchased a home, who has not purchased a home in the last 10 years, right? So this
Right.
is very one of those topics that I think anybody can relate to
Benefit
and
from. Mhm.
benefit from. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So this actually came up recently for me. So we both get asked this question a lot, right? Like, okay, I want to buy a house. What are my next steps? But recently, my niece's friend reached out to me wanting to purchase a home. So I was, working with her on what she needs to do. And then she's like, well, what is the process? What do I need to go through? And then it dawned on me, I was like, that's probably the number one thought in everybody's mind. So that's where this idea came from. And then, of course, with the spring market, and then, we have a lot of people that are going to be entering the market. And like you said, someone who bought 10 years ago, I mean, gosh, the process changes every year. So it's just a good idea to have this topic, to discuss this topic, and to revisit this on a regular basis because the process always changes according to the market and what's going on in it. So,
Right. So I'm ready to buy a house, Jen. What do I do?
all right. So when I have a client that reaches out to me and says, hey, I finally made a decision. I'm no longer going to rent because rent is increasing and the amount I pay for rent, I can put that in a house and build equity. What are my first steps? What I always do is I first ask them, well, have you spoken with a lender yet? 9 times out of 10, they have not, which makes me very happy because, of course, then I come in and I sell my friend Gustavo. And so I will tell them I have the perfect lender that I would like you to meet. And then what I will do is I do a soft intro between my client and Gustavo. And so I will either do text message, email, I introduce the two. And to me, that's one of the very first steps that anybody should take is, I mean, well, of course, reach out to me, the agent, and then I will connect you with the lender. And then Gus will continue from there and why it's important to talk to him first.
Yeah. And so once they do talk to me, right, and when they reach out, the number one thing that I always say is, Jen's job is to find you that perfect home, right? And we're not talking about HGTV. We're not talking about like, oh, what do you know? This is the perfect house, the first one that we saw, right? It's going to take some time potentially, but your job is to find them the home and do the negotiations. My job is to make sure the financing is in order. So when somebody asks me that question, I'm already thinking of income, credit, job, assets for down payment. That's what comes to mind is I want to get you prepared um, for what as a buyer for what's to come because obviously at the end of the day we want to make sure that they're financially ready because the last thing we want, and you tell me how many times this has happened to clients who have not been prepared, is what? Oh, I found a house, but wait, I don't have financing. Let me go get financing, and then what happens at that point? We don't want for you to fall in love with the house, and then come to find out, oh, it's not what I expected, or oh, I expected the payment to be different, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
why, yes, that's very critical and very big part of what it but let's assume, let's just kind of like fast track a few of these topics, right? Where I go through the process and I explain to them and they are pre-approved. Then what's next after that? Once we know that the finances are all in order, and of course, there's a big part of that process that I take care of. But let's just assume right now they're done, they're approved, rocking, ready to rock and roll.
Yep. And also one thing to just quickly bring up, because this is what's currently happening in our market. Another very important reason to be pre-approved ahead of time is because I don't want to show you a home and then we're given 1 hour to submit an offer and you're not even pre-approved. This market is still moving very, very fast in southeastern Wisconsin. We're low in inventory, high in demand. Competition is all over the place. So I need to have you have that pre-approval in place because if we have to make a quick decision, I already have that piece of paper with me because we need to submit it with the offer. So, all right. So now Gustavo pre-approved the buyer. It comes back to me. What I like to do is I like to set up a virtual or in-person consultation. There are times that Gustavo and I have done this together, or we can do it one-on-one, or myself with just the buyer. And during this consultation, this is when I'm going to work with you, the buyer, to go over what are your wants, your needs in a home, go over locations, your price point. I may be a little bit more realistic with your expectations. So I'm going to be very brutally honest with if your price point is going to work with what you are looking for, if the location is going to work with what you're looking for. I may suggest other surrounding areas just because I know that it may be easier for you to get into one area versus another area. So the consult to me happens way before we even start looking, but right after the pre-approval most times, because I now know the price point that you were able to afford, and that's what I'm going to set up your search with using that price point. And then we also go through, okay, I'm going to set you up. You receive listing notifications. We go see a home. You write that offer. We get an accepted offer, or we're competing. I'll go over the things that we do to be competitive. And then once we get that accepted offer, it's kind of like, all right, now we pull the lender back in. So one thing I will also say to my buyers is during, when we sit down, we talk, I get your information, I set up a search for you, I start looking for you, just know that you could find your home right away. You could find it within 2 homes. Unfortunately, it could take you a year to find this home. It really comes down to what you are willing to put an offer in on, what you are willing to let slide, in regards to your wants and your needs, and then how competitive and how much you love that house, like how competitive you're going to be for that house. So I tell my buyers always have patience, but once we do get it accepted, I then pull Gustavo back in, and now the fun really starts because we got to work to get you to the closing table and to get you into that home. So,
Well, and so kind of to touch base a little bit and maybe go a little bit further back a few steps there is during the home buying process, during the house hunting process, the house hunting process, that's where as a buyer, you want to make sure that you have a good team in your corner, right? So
mm-hmm.
like you and I have done many times where it's like, hey, because we are in this very aggressive seller's market and depending on what side of town, some of these homes are flying off the shelf where it's just like, hey, you want to work with somebody where you are finding out everything you can about the home, anything that the seller may or may not need or want. I'm trying to figure out how can we get aggressive, how can we get competitive on the financing side of things, and then we join forces and we become, that dream team where it's just like, hey, how can we strategize? And we've done this, and we have, a very common story. The one that always comes to mind is, where the buyer's like, hey, we want this house, and so you and I are putting our heads together. How can we come up with this, right? How can we go ahead and put the best, strongest offer that, at the end of the day, once we want it to be fair for everybody, right? We want the
Hmm.
seller to know, hey, this was a great offer, and we want the buyer to know, hey, I got a great house, and nobody wants to feel short, right? And
Right,
so
right.
that's where having, yes, anybody can calculate your income, anybody can show you a house, anybody can do that, but it's just that it's all in the details, and I think that's where, working with an agent like yourself that's experienced, working with a mortgage person like myself, and really having that bond where we can work together to for the greater good of the client is, I feel like that's where I think sets us apart, right, from other,
Hmm.
from
And
your buyer calling 1-800 got mortgage or whatever. I don't know.
Rocket Mortgage.
I don't want to
And
say the
just
name.
I will, no. And just to go off of that too, if there is a home that my buyers are interested in submitting an offer on, I do reach out to the listing agent. I introduce myself. I start creating that relationship with the listing agent. And then I ask the appropriate questions. Are we competing? What is the timeline? What are your sellers most interested in? 9 times out of 10, it's always going to be price, but is there anything else we can do to make our offer stand out? How many offers are we up against, right? So I take that information, I strategize with my buyers, but I also then, like you mentioned, I strategize with you. We come up with some very creative scenarios. We try to make it work for our buyers. And of course, it's buyers have the final say in what they're willing to, the price they're willing to go up to, what they're willing to weigh, what they're not. But what also works to our advantage is just the relationships that we've been creating in this industry and with the listing agent. You and I both have had several opportunities or several offers where the agent's like, oh, I know who they are. Oh, I love working with them. So it's not only just about having the dream team come up with the great pre-approval, looking for the home, strategizing, putting together the best offer possible. It's about reputation too.
Oh, very true. I 100% cannot tell you how many times a buyer has reached out to me and said, "Oh, I got the accepted offer," and I'm like, "Yes, we're excited." And then, they say something along the lines of, "Hey, you know, we were not the highest offer, but
Hmm.
guess what? They like the financing. They like that you were on the other side of the financing, and they've worked with you in the past." And so I feel like those little details obviously come in huge. And to know that again, we're doing a good job, right?
Hmm.
In this market, that hey, the fact that people recognize our name and people that know, hey, I like working with that person, or hey, that person doesn't make me want to run to the hills, kind of thing. Those are all positive things that will just continue to help us and help our clients, get that much, get that accepted offer essentially, right? Because that at the end goal, that's what they want, right?
Right.
Um,
And also too, like a very important thing with an offer is that the other side knows that we're going to get it to close without a lot of hiccups. So again, I'll go back to this is why in the very beginning, one of the most important steps for us is that you meet with Gustavo. Then you meet with me and we have a consult because during these sit downs, we're going to tell you do this, don't do that, right? And we're going to explain the process to you. We're going to tell you what's going to work and what doesn't work. And so, one of the biggest things with pre-approvals that clients don't understand is that when you sit down with them and you go over their financials and you are putting together a plan for them and what they can afford at that time, when it, when we get that accepted offer and we're now in the closing process, we're taking that pre-approval and we're turning it into an actual loan. So all the things need to get pulled again, right? We need to look at your debt to income ratio. We need to look at if you made any big purchases. So in the very beginning, when we sit down and discuss things with you, we are going to say, don't make any big purchases. Don't quit your job. Don't submit a letter of resignation a week before closing because a lender will 100% check your job status days before closing. And so because we sit down and discuss this with you at the very beginning and we continue to discuss this throughout the process, and then we find the house we're bringing you to close, that other side knows that we are doing our job, so no surprises are going to come up during the closing process.
yeah, I always tell buyers, not always, but like frequently, I said, continue to live your boring life, right?
Yeah.
We like boring. We like boring in this scenario because,
Hmm.
we don't want, I don't know, I don't like surprises in general, and I sure don't want surprises at the worst time, especially when somebody's trying to buy their home. you know. So yeah, I do agree. We keep drilling that into buyers as much as possible, you know. But even like, you know, yes, it's not on peaches and cream, right? It's not on, you know, where yes, things are going to go wrong, but that's where also we've dealt with a lot. We know how to hopefully address many of the concerns, and we'll find a solution. At the end of the day, there's always a solution for everything, right?
Right.
And so, you know, getting the pre-approval is just the first part. You know, maintaining that, make sure your financial status stays the same, nothing changes. Looking at the homes, you showing them as buyer's agent, hey, here's what to look out for, you know, and then throughout the process, continue to connect with me as a lender to make sure that, you know, because even also rates can change. So as the buyer goes through the house hunting process, we want to make sure that the buyer also is aware of their numbers, right? And so that's my
Yep.
job. You know, my job is that you should, as a buyer, know what your payments are. You know what your cash close is going to be, what your closing costs are going to be, and I try to, as much as I'm not perfect, not gonna deny it, but you know, I try my best, try to communicate as much as I can to all my clients and say, here's where we're at, here's where you stand, so that at the end of the day, they're in the knowledge, in the know of where we're gonna end up at closing, right?
Right.
And so that's
So
all part of the process. Yep.
So now that we have that accepted offer and we pulled you in, one thing I would tell you is that so I pulled Gustavo in through email and I'm texting him, I'm calling him and said, hey, we got an accepted offer. Let's go, right? So then I'm working with the buyer to get through the inspection period, but majority of the closing process is done through the lending side. So after we get through the inspection period, what are you working on with the buyer on the lending side to get us to close?
Oh, great question. So if we need an appraisal, we order appraisal, we send them actual legal disclosure forms. Everything we discuss, we put it in writing, right? Interest rate, payments, all that good stuff. We might collect, depending on how much time has gone by between pre-approval and accepted offer, we might ask for an updated bank statement, updated pay stub. Sometimes the lender finds stuff, you know, like you said, lenders will do these searches. So sometimes they found something on public record that we have to address, right? So we have to go through all those checks and balances. But assuming all goes well and all goes as planned, we pretty much can get a final what's called clear to close, and that's the best
Our
three words.
favorite thing.
Our three favorite words.
B to
And
C.
so CDC. And so therefore, once we go through that part, then really honestly, the hardest part is just going to be scheduling and getting the final docs. But obviously, closing should be a fun time, and it should be an exciting time as well.
Yep. And then also during this time, we pull in a title company that will go ahead and put all the paperwork together for us. They're the ones that actually make it all legal. So they are working behind the scenes, working on the deed, doing searches on the property, making sure there's no liens or judgments on either party. And then I also am reaching out to buyers to schedule that final walkthrough, which a lot of buyers will bring tape measures, paint samples, bring friends and family. We do the final walkthrough, and we're also making sure that the home is in the same state as it was when the offer was accepted. If we do find that anything is broken, there's holes in the wall because they moved out, things like that, or items that were supposed to be left behind, they were not. This is why a live agent versus AI is very important, because I will go in and negotiate and make sure that what was promised to us actually happens. And then we will go ahead and schedule that great closing where we all sit together and we give you a 30-year debt. It's an asset. We all love it. And the longer you stay in the home, the more equity you build, and that's money for you. So your house is making you money.
Exactly. So we obviously summarize this pretty quickly, but there's obviously very key parts, key points to every single part of the process. But that's where you're just going to team up with a professional, and we're going to walk you through it and make sure that all in all, everything goes as smooth as can be.
Yep. So the one most important thing to remember when you are ready to buy that house, reach out to me, and then I will set up a consult with you, and I will connect you to Gustavo. Or reach out to Gustavo. He will set up a phone call with you, and he will connect you to me. So if it's anything you remember from this live, reach out to one of us first, and then we will take you through the next steps. Now, the phone call with Gustavo at the consult when we will go into a lot more details, like you mentioned, but this is all very high level information that we want to share. And then, of course, once we close, we don't go anywhere. We're always available to help you guys. Post-closing, I have referrals for everything. Gustavo will help you in case the rates drop. You want to refi. If you want to refi from a 30 to a 15, we're available to help you guys out.
That's right.
So now, one slight program change, and then I'll let you all go for this Wednesday evening. Our next live is supposed to happen the week after Memorial Day, that Wednesday. And we all know that Memorial Day is the official start of summer. So we are going to change our format, and we're going to do once a month during the summer months because we're all outside enjoying the weather. So once we have that date set for June, just be on the lookout for us advertising our next live, which will be most likely in the middle of June. But then going forward, we are going to do monthly. And then once fall hits and we're all back to school, normal lives, the weather gets colder, we'll go back to biweekly.
Awesome.
And also remember that these will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So if you want to rewatch them, share them with somebody, go ahead and do that. And then if you guys have any topics you want us to cover, send it our way and we will discuss it on a future live.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jan.
All right, everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.